Okay, before I get into any spoilers, if you read history, philosophy, political science, or have an interest in that kind of stuff, you will find Andor interesting to watch. You don't even have to have watched the Star Wars movies, you might even be better off if you haven't. The show is about various people who are part of either the Empire or the Rebellion. If you substitute Israel for Empire and Palestinians for Rebellion, you'd wonder if Tony Gilroy was writing about that. The show is about how people get radicalized, how people become disillusioned. It's about how all relationships are destroyed in war, no matter how hard people try to prevent it. Now, there is action, it is suspenseful, but there's no satisfying pure good against evil. There are no real heroes, no pure villains. So, if you want pure escapist adventure, Andor will probably frustrate you. But I want to look at some one-star reviews, not because I think they're wrong. I think it's important for the point I want to make later, because this is the other side of this story. So here's vastly overrated. I was so confused throughout the entire development of the exposition, which happened in such a haphazard way that I was never able to connect with the story of characters. Now, see, this is true. It is haphazard. It jumps from story to story. Put the whole story together in your head. And each little thing is low stakes. So this is not a wrong review. Again, you can a 1-star review and a 10-star review can both be true at the same time. Here's boring and more boring. Now, interestingly, more people like these 1-star reviews than the 10-star reviews. Okay. We know the series is a huge waste of money and people's time. People in expensive prop clothes walking around without saying anything. All the characters are dead boring and so witless it hurts. So, I don't know. I don't really agree with that. But again, I can see it. What story? There's no story here. And it's true. There's no large good against evil arc here, which I'll get into a little bit later. Where are the fun, the magic, and the entertaining story and characters of the first 3 original Star Wars movies? Where? It's true. It's not in here. But there is stuff. It doesn't mean it's just good on a different way. I enjoyed the first Star Wars and the third Star Wars movie a lot. The great escapist entertainment, and they are thoughtful, but this is a very deep political TV show essentially. So here's So Embarrassing. Now this is the one that cracks me up because this slop snooze fest writing is truly childish and full of cringe moments. Now, he's saying he grew up with Tarkovsky, Kurosawa, Melville, Scott, Lucas, whatever. Now, Tarkovsky says the most important thing he says in his book, Sculpting in Time, is that many movies rely on tropes, like the scene where the guy's at the family playing with his kids, he's a good guy. That's a trope in many buddy movies, right? And he says if you want to do something that's true to your life, if you want to communicate something that you see that's important, you can never know if that viewer is going to get it or not. And that's why, some movies aren't really good. Now, I remember watching Sculpting in Time with my girlfriend in her early 20s. She insisted we go see it. I thought it was literally the worst movie I'd ever seen. I didn't understand how you could make a movie as bad as that. But when I read his book, I understood it. So it's funny that he says this because to me, the Tarkovsky philosophy is that no, if you don't get a movie, it's not anybody's fault. The filmmaker tries to make the point they want to make. You get it or you don't get it. But, it's not because the movie maker didn't want to reach you. So to me, Tony Gilroy and Beau Willimon, they reached me 100%. I knew exactly what they were talking about. I loved it. Like they were like boom, 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 home runs every time with me. But that doesn't mean they're going to hit it with other people. To other people, they can be very boring. So he says, when you have such a mediocre script, I think no, it was far from a mediocre script. In fact, I would say that would be a good script for people to read because they do things that aren't done in other shows. Nothing else needs to be said. 0 of 10 easily. All right. So I'm going to have some semi-spoilers here. I don't really consider them spoilers, but, if you hate no spoilers whatsoever, don't watch anymore. Okay. But, these semi-spoilers might even help you because you'll get into, like, the whole worldview of them. Like, sometimes movies aren't as good for me because I don't get quite where they're going. Do you know what I'm saying? and I don't get to it till later. So anyway, uh, what I loved about Andor is the many characters who get killed despite doing the right things or trying to find the right path. A lot of them. Again, I don't want to do specific spoilers here. So if there's a main theme in Andor, it's this, in my opinion. If no one agrees on the common good, are people expendable in service of it? Right? Okay. So there are essentially four groups operating against the Empire. There's Luthen and Mothma's financial efforts to fund a rebellion. There's Luthen and Mothma's niece Vel's efforts to sabotage the Empire. There's the Gorman Rebellion. There are a couple of rebellion groups on various planets planning who knows what. And there's Andor, who never wanted to become a rebel but is pulled into it. So his is a complex story. They're all complex stories. There isn't a single character in Andor that is not a complex character. So all these entities, all these people have different agendas and they don't trust each other completely. Well, why? Because they see how various of their friends are killed for the greater cause that, again, no one agrees with. So, if you're in the rebellion group, right, you think you're all fighting against the Empire, but one person might say, well, if this person is captured, they're going to give stuff away and we don't want to kill him, but we have to kill him because if they get captured, then everything is done. Well, one person will be like, no, we'll be able to protect him. The other person will be like, no. Like, who makes that decision, right, in a rebellion? Because you're fighting sort of an organization or an institution that would make that decision easily. It's not easy in a rebellion. And that happens time and time again. But if you're not into those questions, Andor is going to bore you. So is it worth it to die for a cause no one may agree on? People might even ignore. In fact, the ending pushes on that question. It does have a very strong ending. But again, I'm not going to give it away. So you can't watch Andor and not pay attention. You have to keep asking yourself, why is this or that person doing this, whatever. The reason people give it 1 star is they want to be entertained. And Andor, I gotta say, it takes some work. Andor isn't about the dark force versus the force of good, like the original Star Wars. It's multi-layered, multifaceted story about people caught up in forces both bigger than them and obscure, invisible, difficult to understand. So now for the bad thing that I like about Andor, and I don't blame the filmmakers. I blame somebody told them they couldn't do certain things and had to do others. I believe Gilroy and Willimon weren't able to make the Andor they really wanted, and they had to compromise on those things. Where was that scene? So the rebels are not romanticized, and that's what's great. The rebels are both good and bad are shown with the rebels. But it's the main characters working for the Empire that aren't, and they too are not portrayed as pure evil. So all the characters are portrayed really well, but there's a problem. The characters for the rebellion are allowed to voice doubts. They argue, like, should this person be killed? Not, should we do this? Should we do that? Or is it more important to do something for me or for the rebellion? They have all these honest conversations where sometimes they're with the rebellion, sometimes they're not. You know what I mean? They're struggling with the question. But there's none of that for anyone in the Empire. The Empire is presented as completely evil, is totally run by the secret police. And because it's like a secret police organization where anybody that says anything that's somewhat disagreeable, you expect them to get killed, you never see any of that, it makes the characters, like each person that's part of the Empire, is like, why would you join an obvious police state? Like, you have to be mental, right? So if you're looking at like Dedra and Cyril, two really strong characters, and their story arc would have been heartbreaking if the filmmakers had been allowed to make them seem not so nuts for wanting to be part of a police state. Because if the filmmakers were allowed to show the Empire, it's just like another country like the U.S. or Israel, whatever, right? Good and bad, all these various problems. Then you see Dedra and Cyril as their, and they do go through this in the story. It's like, yes, they were part of a bad thing, but things went wrong and whatever, things bad, but they were real people. But if you're people that part of a bunch of a police state, a bunch of crazy whatever, right? Then you're like, no, like I can't sympathize with you because you're part of this. So it was very hard for the filmmakers they did create a lot of sympathy for Dedra and Cyril, but they couldn't get all the way with it because they were forced, I believe, to say, yeah, you can't present the Empire as having any redeeming qualities whatsoever. That was basically, I guess that's what I'm saying, is that the problem with the show is that because you can never present the Empire as having any redeeming qualities, it basically tied their hands in character and story development. And, you know, again, if they didn't do that, if they had been allowed to do that, then I think it would have been a masterpiece. I feel that's where the writing was going. And then there are the inane conversations with the robots. So, you know, whatever. Anyway, I enjoyed the first and the third Star Wars, but actually I've grown through all the other Star Wars. I'm not going to get into a rant about that. So, except for the robots and the over-the-top stormtroopers, I hung on every word. I found, yeah, Andor was TV the way to me, you know, it was TV for me. Okay, I'm not the 1-star guy. I'm the 10-star guy. I only wish that they really could have gone better with it. It was the same thing like Beau Willimon wrote for A House of Cards. Like at the end when he pushes her into railway tracks, it's totally unbelievable. The show lost it for me. But up to there, like pure genius. But the studios are always pushing to make things more black and white, to make things, you know, to not make the viewer think, to basically ratchet up the violence and the pressure. And, you know, I get it, whatever. But, you know, it creates some shows that could be fantastic. Now, like The Wire never had to do that. And that's why The Wire is an absolute masterpiece that will live on for 100 years. But unfortunately, Andor was not allowed the freedom to really tell the story as it was trying to be told, in my opinion. Anyway, I have so many things to do. I don't know if you're watching this far, so I'm really just going to force myself to put up Maxoc videos, even though it'll be very quick. And, you know, I don't know. You watch it, people watch them, I don't know, we'll see. Thanks.